What is up, bros? Josh here. Today's video, we're going over the latest version of the Yudachi, the Tier 7 IJN Premium Destroyer. Now, this one has been struggling to kind of have a identity, if you will. Tier 7 IJN DDs have really been kind of outshadowed by everything else. Power creep is a word that I would use pretty regularly talking about these IJN destroyers. The IJN Torpo life has been something that hasn't really been the easiest. We continue to get ships that are stealthier and stealthier, that have better guns. And when you bring in a new Tier 7 Premium IJN Destroyer, to really like stand out from the rest of the crowd has been kind of hard, and this is one that's definitely been having a trouble since it's a premium ship too. You definitely want it to stand out at least a little bit, but the Yudachi itself has been trying to find its place, and I think right now, although in my opinion not my playstyle, it kind of has with its most recent changes. So its most recent changes, basically its detection has been increased to 6.1. That's a full concealment with both the concealment captain, as well as getting the new torpedo reload. So at tier 7, a comparable destroyer at this tier for IJN would be the Shiratsuyu. Shiratsuyu has the ability of taking the smoke or the torp reload. This one has both of them, so you do have that advantage there. And this one is kind of the in-between of the Shira and the Akatsuki, both tier 7 IJN destroyers. Akatsuki known for having a little bit better guns, Shiratsuyu known as being a bit more of a torp-focused destroyer, but this one does have longer torps, which actually were quite nice. Now in this build, which a lot of other CCs have been using, and I kind of thought about using it, but ended up having some decent success with this, is the 15-kilometer torps. Now, if you did take the torp speed consumable, torp speed captain skill, you could get them down to 12 kilometers, which is still quite good. The downside of these torps, though, and this is the weakness of this ship that's been overall, is it's a torp-focused boat, but the torps really aren't that good, and the main reason is their detection range, which is 1.9 kilometers. Very high for this tier, some of the highest in the game. I think there's only a couple that have options that are actually worse than this, but you do have them, and they're relatively slow at 59 knots. So if you did take the torp reload, again, I wasn't using it in this build. I went for more of a gun loadout build. As you can see, we had some decent success. But in that build, you'd have 12-kilometer torps at 62 knots, which is quite decent. This one, though, overall, I haven't really enjoyed this ship. If you ever watch my streams, again, we play all this live on twitch.tv. Come check us out. This is a type of ship I just don't tend to play. I don't like it. I don't like torp-focused ships. It's just not my personal playstyle. But I think this ship has now, with having the torp reload as well as the smoke, it can actually be quite good, and has finally found its maybe its identity of being this kind of in between a gunboat-esque, as you know, the Akatsuki. 3 sets of 10-kilometer torps, but has decent guns, but a tad higher detection. This one has okay guns, but more of kind of the spammy torpedoes as the Shiratsuyu has, and so it's kind of that in-between, which I actually kind of find to be, I guess, decent. If I were to pick one of the 3, although I did just play rank sprint with the Shiratsuyu, which I did end up finding kind of fun, this one may have been a little bit more successful because the gun layout may have worked a little bit better. But you'll see me go against this Gaja. If you don't know, Gaja has deep water torps, so we kind of have this awkward standoff, and then I go, wait a second, I can just go in and we're gonna be fine. Again, it's a Camelus Gaja Mata. So again, one thing I said was that this is a more gunboat setup. We have radio location, we have BFT, and I went with expert marksmanship. The turrets are still relatively slow, and it was quite punishing to actually use them, so I end up going with a bit more of a gun. I did not take the torpedo reload. I took a survivability expert, so I went more with the focus on the guns, and overall the torps reload kind of quickly. So although still not my playstyle of this ship, as I'm kind of trying to make it a bit more of the gunboat, I ended up in a couple games having some decent success. This was our best one so far, and I kind of spent more time than I normally do with a ship in this process, trying to really feel and figure out how this ship actually works. It's something that I tend to not look. I have hated it in the past, checking out the older versions, just not a big fan. And with this one, I really at this point wanted to see how this ship worked and how it affected the battle, because it's something that really I really haven't put that much time into, I guess is a fair way of saying it. So yeah, this one we put a little bit more time into. I think we ended up playing like 6 or 7 games that night, really kind of checking it out. And this was our best one of the night. Actually had a pretty good comeback in this too. But still, the playstyle of this ship, it's an IJN torp boat. You have torps that you're going to be launching as as much as they're up, you have the ability of a good burst damage with the torpedo reload consumable, as well as having some decent guns. As we all know, IJN destroyers are the guns are actually quite punishing. A lot of people don't use them that much, but the high alpha damage, and you will see that later in the game against some ships and finishing off even some cruisers. But a pretty high alpha damage and a pretty high fire chance, honestly. So a nice little package, I guess. Still, though, not sure, elephant in the room, not sure how this ship will be sold. I assume it'll just be a straight up purchase in the premium store. So this also known as being the poi boat. I know that. That's definitely not my world. So I think that'll be one of the big draws for this ship. But I think the ship, as we see it now, maybe actually has some worth than it's had in the past. I think I've even called this one of the worst ships I've ever tested. And now with this most recent version, I think it's good enough, honestly. It's not going to be top tier. It's not going to be one of the best at this tier, but I think it stands out enough as a tier 7 DD in a tier that's honestly quite good. Tier 7 tends to have good matchmaking. Ships that are going to be going against this, you're going to be kind of stealthy for this tier at 6.1 kilometers, so that's not bad. You have the advantage of even up tiering decently because you have 15-kilometer torps. Yes, they're spotted from space at 1.9, but still having that extra range keeps you away from radar. So there's a lot of things you could kind of use as your strength, even if you are bottom tier, to even use that. So I found this to be quite good. Majority of the things at this tier, if you are decent, and again, we had a little bit of a as I take a big salvo. I remember this one. He was sitting behind the rock the entire time, and as soon as I get close to him, I take a big old salvo instead. So space armor right there. Yeah, well, somebody hanging behind a rock, and as soon as they leave it, they get basically 100 to 0'd. But still, not too bad. You can actually see some decent alpha damage that we do here with these guns. You'll see us do a decent amount of this. I'll actually shoot quite often with this ship. And that's one thing that's kind of nice, is you have the ability to do a decent amount of damage with your guns and have the ability to smoke up if you need to. You'll actually see me be pretty effective. We had a couple games actually that we kind of came back and I was able to do a lot. Now, would I have been able to do that with other ships? Probably. Did this thing bring some situations to the table that others wouldn't have? I actually think it did in a couple of the games, but I think maybe I wouldn't have needed to have that, if you kind of get what I mean. I think there's other ships that maybe could have just kind of finished the job quicker in a way. That this one, you know, it's kind of a slow, and a lot of the damage from this type of ship tends to be kind of slow, RNG based, you know. That's why I like hydro or hybrid destroyers so much, that are kind of like the USN German, yada yada, stuff like that. I tend to find that a little bit more fun because you can control the amount of damage you're doing a bit more. With this, you are kind of dependent on your torps, and having torps that aren't particularly that strong. Even the damage is relatively low. Seeing damage of 8,000-9,000 on an IGN torp, which seems very weird. Majority of people would see you know, a typical torp of hitting into the mid-teens, you know, 14, 15, if not 1,000. There were situations where I thought I would one-shot things, and I hit them for 8,000. And so it was kind of a bummer. I made the joke even during the stream that even the ship can't even IGN destroyer that well. But then we ended up kind of finding out how the ship played, and it actually ended up being quite effective. But having the ability to even work on cruisers like this too. Would I have been able to do this with the Shira? Would I have been able to do this with Akatsuki? Probably. And what I was just doing there, finishing off some ships, putting some pressure on them. But something that this ship really brings is just being able to engage other ships from farther than 10 kilometers. That's a rarity, especially at this tier, and really in this game at, you know, anymore. It's tough to find destroyers that have more than a 12-kilometer range for torps. Now, other torps are going to be much better. You can even find something like the Shimakaze, obviously known for having 20-kilometer torps, but also a high detection. These are some of the longest torps that you're going to see in the game for a while at 15 kilometers. So it's up to you if you think you want to get torp reload, or if you want to get the torp speed, if you will. That is something that is, and then you can see the torp reload standard is basically a minute 30, so it's not too bad. You could speed that up with a captain skill. I just chose not to. And here you see we're going to focus a little bit more and send these torps in. Stationary battleships, no matter how far away they spot the torpedoes, they are definitely going to take them. So you'll see us do a bunch of damage as we're down by a couple ships, but we're going to bring them back. I actually should have just rotated faster over than what I did. We would have been able to kind of put some more pressure on these guys. But as you can see, they probably already see the torps pretty soon. They're probably going to be seeing about right there. So they were relatively, they're sets of 4. So there's going to be some space in between them. But, you know, the thing about this is it's tier 7. So tier 7 is going to have the ability of having a kind of wide range of skill, if you will. A wide range of skill and a kind of a wide variety of players that are going to be playing those. So you might see just more stationary ships than you would in a normal world in these lower tiers, quote unquote lower tiers. And yeah, you can probably make good work of these mediocre torpedoes. But and if it was something like, I'm trying to put it in the realm of if this was ranked sprint, how it would do. I think it would be okay. The detection's pretty good, but going against other things like the Jervis, which has a 6.3 kilometer detection, but with radio location could be quite effective. I feel like the weaknesses of this ship are still there, but I feel like it brings somebody who loves the IJN Torpo life, definitely more than I do. It brings something that's unique enough to have that tier 7 price tag. Again, this could be part of an event. I don't know. I can only assume, though, that it's going to be sold just as a kind of standard premium ship. And the tier 7 price tag isn't the worst. Destroyers tend to go into the mid $20 range. So this is a really, really good tier. You could make a lot of credits. You actually see how many credits we make in this game. It's actually pretty decent. We do a decent amount of damage, though. So obviously that's going to affect everything. We don't use any boost in this game. We are purely using the single det flag, as you can see as we turn our ship right there. We're using the single det flag. That's it. So none of these economic boosts. So you could actually have some pretty decent outcomes when it comes to your ship. Now, for a normal captain build, I went with the kind of the standard priority target, last stand, survivability expert, concealment expert. Obviously, I picked up radio location, and then I picked up BFT. So there's a couple builds you could do, and again, it would be premium, so you can rotate in some higher level captains. You could pick up things like superintendent for this extra. As you see right now, I'm out of smokes after this. I only have 1 torp reload booster. So definitely superintendent is at a premium because you're going to get some nice extra consumables as we snag the war spite a little bit right there too. But I like having a little bit more health just because of my playstyle. And I like having BFT because I like having just a little bit better guns because even though you're not the stealthiest, which this ship used to be tied for the stealthiest range, you will be pretty stealthy and you want to be as competitive as possible. After that, for the 19 point, picked up expert marksman just to speed up those turrets because they were god tier slow. And we're going to snag that, I think. Yeah, we snagged that right there. So 100k already. And I think we even get a fire on this. I think we actually do okay. So we're starting to use a little bit of our turrets, a little bit of our torps. Yeah, we snag a permafire because he just repped our flood. And as you see, we can keep pumping out some more damage. But this is a game, though, I think that kind of shows off the potential strengths of this ship. Again, is this a situation where I'm doing stuff that a Shiratsuyu wouldn't have done? Am I doing stuff that, let's say, a Jervis wouldn't have done? Am I doing things? And, well, I think this ship is doing what it does quite well, although this wasn't the normal game. We played this ship pretty regularly throughout the entire night, and this was by far the best game we had. But overall, we were still doing pretty decently. We were averaging between 40 and 50k damage, which I think is pretty solid. And, you know, anytime there is a IJN Torpo playstyle, you're going to get big fluctuations. You're going to get games where you aren't hitting any torpedoes. Then you're going to get games like this where you hit 8 torpedoes and you're going to be doing hundreds of thousands of damage. So with some good matchmaking, we had really good matchmaking all game or all night with this ship. Tier 7, again, tends to have a pretty good matchmaking. There was only, like, I think one game that we had like a kind of a bad outcome, and that was, I think we got focused by a CV like instantly that knew who we were. So that was a bit of a bummer. But still, this is something that this ship is going to do what the strength of this ship is. So as you see, we're down pretty heavy right now, only a little bit of time left. And honestly, this is a situation where this is probably one of the only ships that could have done this. Now their team kind of starts to throw this. yada yada, give them what they will. I gotta give their team a little bit of credit for, you know, it's always one of those when you're playing these and you want to make a cool video and you're going, please just kind of throw this game so we can come back because it'll make a good video because it's a good game. But this wasn't the normal. I will say that this wasn't the normal. This was something that we saw a little bit of. You know, we had a couple 70,000 games, we had a couple 80,000 games, but I would say kind of the majority were probably between 50K or so. A couple torpedo hits. We maybe got some early kill on a DD because we shot our guns and he didn't, or you know, vice versa. So I just want to say that even though we're showing off this, and we, you know, tend to show off kind of our better games when we see games like this, this wasn't the norm. This was the potential though, which I think is kind of a fair thing to show off. As you see, I'm missing all of my shells, and this is kind of a good show off too, of the Yudachi versus the Shiratsuyu. And he's starting to go. So nice little 2,500 salvo. We're trying to get torps out and try to actually save our CV because he'll actually be quite effective through the rest of it. But still, IJN guns are good. That's something that is always surprising to so many people. The damage we're able to do. You know, he was almost full life. I was at 6K. Now I'm at just under 5K, and he's at, you know, half life. So not too bad on trades right there, but I need to keep screening for this Ranger. But the team actually played pretty well. I thought the Farragut was going to go cap, but he ended up doing what he was doing, and a bit of a bummer, but ended up working out in the end as we're going to start working on this Scharnhorst. Again, I need to go screen for this guy, keep him alive, and we can maybe keep it up, because I think I put the torps in pretty solidly on that Scharnhorst. And what do they still have? They have the Shira, the Scharnhorst, there's a New York, a Fiji, and that Warspite that was way off in the corner. So we end up getting that pretty nice. He ended up sitting there perfectly. We end up getting like a couple dev strikes. Now they don't show up. We don't get any rewards when we're playing this these test ships because of how the test ships work. But still, overall, pretty effective, and we can keep kind of rolling there. So we end up getting the kill on that, and this is going to be a full duration game. But Shira versus this. See, I think this would basically be outgun a Shira the entire time, but the Shira would be able to get the first salvo because it is detected. Again, the changes of this ship were the pretty much a full detection build, the detection going up to 6.1 instead of the low detection like the Shira had at 5.9, and the ability of getting the torp reload booster. So I think at this point, overall, we were able to, and super close to killing that guy, we were able to actually pump out a decent amount of damage. I think the ship now at this point has enough to give it its own identity, which is kind of what it was lacking. It was trying to be a couple different things, trying to be the IJN DD. And again, I kind of made this joke throughout this time that I still feel like this is kind of a dated ship. You know, you compare it to a Jervis, which pretty much counters this ship. You compare it to a Haida, which is, you know, stealthier than this with Gaja level guns. You know, there's a lot of situations where this ship I think would have been extremely popular a couple years ago. It would have been extremely good, but nowadays it's just, you know, it's a little dated in my opinion. It's definitely not my play style, but if I were to play a tier 7 IJN DD, I'd probably pick this one. I think it's more fun. I think it's a better balance of guns. It's still pretty stealthy, and overall I think it's one that could have a pretty decent outcome, having kind of all the tools that the IJN line tends to have, and the ability to kind of do some decent work. We were able to come back, and I think it was partially because of this ship. So I have to give it a little bit of credit. I think it's much better than where it started. This ship was so boring to play in the past because it basically just was a bad IJN destroyer. So again, what does this ship bring? It brings a pretty decent stealth, 6.1, 15-kilometer torps. You have smoke, you have torp reload booster, so you have some pretty nice tools to use, and overall can be extremely effective on being that premium torpo in a really good tier if you're interested in picking up a tier 7. Again, do not know how this ship will be sold. It's still a work in progress. These stats are subject to change, and we may end up making another Yudachi video, so maybe Poi version 4 or whatever we're on right now. But still, I think what we see right now is probably something we'll see in the end. It'll be pretty close to. We probably even could have got a crack in, even though we wouldn't have got the reward for it. Probably could have got it if we focused a little bit more on just snagging the kills, but a nice little comeback too. So overall, a pretty good game, and kind of showed off the strengths of this. But Yeah, as it ticks out right there into the valley, gonna throw out his last salvos from max range, and there we go. So 150k, 3 kills. Overall though, it's not bad. It's not as bad as it used to be. I still find this ship to be not mine. I wouldn't go out of my way of getting this ship, but I know there's a lot of people. The IGN Destroyer playstyle, that torque boat playstyle, is, I think, the most popular playstyle out of all the DDs. There are so many people that love this playstyle. Obviously, there are people that would pick it up just for being the poi boat. This could bring something relatively unique, and we'll see once it finally goes live. Again, I think it'll probably be something that's pretty close to what we see right here. But overall, a pretty solid boat, able to do lots of damage, get that XP, and actually some decent credit earnings, as you see right here. So not bad for a Tier 7. But anyways, guys, that's my preview on the recent version we got of the Yudachi, the Tier 7 IJN Premium Destroyer. Anyway, that's it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Remember to like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.